Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. A Seattle woman allegedly hacked her father to death with an ice axe because she was upset that Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election.
We have new details concerning a brutal murder inside a home in Seattle's Rainier Beach neighborhood. A woman is charged with killing her elderly father with an ice axe after an argument. King 5 Sebastian Robertson joining us live from the King County Jail with the newest details tonight. Sebastian.
Hi, Joyce. 33-year-old Corey Burke is currently in the King County Jail. She's charged with murder. One, held on $2 million bail. Now, new court documents obtained by King 5 shine some light into what happened inside that family home.
1 week after Seattle police found a man slashed and bludgeoned to death, a private biohazard cleanup company is seen entering the home.
That's crazy it happened so close.
It was neighbors that called 911 around 8 in the evening on November 5th, Election Day, when a woman was seen and heard smashing windows inside her home. Arriving officers encountered 33-year-old Corey Burke, who, according to court documents, would not give officers permission to search her home. She stated nobody else was inside. Investigators say she was unable to explain the blood on her face, and officers went in anyway, discovering the body of an older white male laying face down on the carpeted floor. That man, later identified as Timothy Burke, Corey's father. Timothy Burke was found with multiple lacerations to his left side, back, head, and ears. Investigators also discovered a silver and blue ice, a pickaxe, lying on the living room floor.
I only saw all the cops. That's it. Block off the road, and so we came around this way.
From Harborview Medical Center, Corey Burke told an officer there was something important about Election Day, that when her father started arguing with her about the lights being shut off, she just freaked out. Police say she whispered to the interviewer, "I killed him." A source tells King 5 Burke was a training manager for Jeff Bezos' aerospace company Blue Origin. And a LinkedIn profile shows she was employed at the time of the killings. A spokesperson tells King 5 Corey Burke is not currently employed with Blue Origin.
Police initially were able to detain Burke out of concern for her mental health. She was taken to Harborview, and that's where allegedly she confessed to investigators about the crime. She was then transferred to jail. Joyce?
Sebastian Roberts.
Now, according to reports, 33-year-old rocket scientist Corey Burke was allegedly upset about Donald Trump winning the 2024 election and defeating Kamala Harris. And as she was allegedly upset about Donald Trump allegedly beating Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, she allegedly got into an argument with her 67-year-old father. And as she got into this argument with her 67-year-old father, she allegedly exploded in a rage and picked up an ice axe and allegedly strangled and bludgeoned her father to death with that ice axe. And then after bludgeoning and stabbing with her father with that ice axe, she allegedly winding up having an episode where she says she participated in an act of liberation and wound up clapping her hands because she had allegedly liberated herself from her father and liberated herself from her father as related to their relationship. Now, as this incident was going on, Corey Burke was allegedly smashing out windows of her $800,000 Seattle home that she shared with her partner and her father, Timothy Burke. And this is where neighbors called the police. And as neighbors called the police and saw Corey Burke with a bloodied face, she denied them entry to their home. However, on seeing the blood on her hands, they saw this as probable cause to come in, and this is where police then found Corey Burke's father, Timothy Burke, lying dead on the floor of the living room of their $800,000 home, and this is where the police decided to detain Corey Burke for possible mental health reasons, and then after detaining her, they decided to arrest her and charge her for murder, and she's currently in the Seattle County Jail on $2 million bail. Now, the Seattle police see the actions of Corey Burke as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged behavior that Corey Burke has allegedly participated in as related to the murder of her father, it definitely fits the pattern and profile of feminist indoctrinated women that I talk about in depth in my book, The Woman Crisis. And it also fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, as well. And when I read about Corey Burke's story, it definitely shows me that she's definitely fitting a pattern of behavior that I talk about in both of my books regarding people living in what I call a rose-colored reality. Now, that rose-colored reality that Corey Burke was possibly living in was possibly established by the strained relationship that she had with her beta male father, a beta male father who Corey Burke alleges she didn't really have strong boundaries with, and because she didn't have those strong boundaries, this is why she allegedly felt hyper-focused and disorganized, and possibly did not have any sort of ability to navigate through her emotions or have any sort of coping skills on how to deal with things in life. And because she didn't have any sort of father to provide her with structure and order, what happened with Corey Burke is that she didn't know how to be able to deal with situations like many people are having a problem with as related to dealing with the reality that Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States and will be the president because a majority of the American people went to the polls and went to vote for Donald Trump to become the next president. No, what happened here with Corey Burke is basically she was in a rose-colored reality colored by mostly the main leftist mainstream media, which basically told a lot of people the lie that Kamala Harris basically was in a neck-and-neck race. And because she wound up buying into that polarized rhetoric, what happened to Corey Burke is she believed that Kamala Harris had a good chance of winning, when in actuality, in reality, Kamala Harris did not have any chance, according to actual polls that were presented on places like New Black Media and places like alt media on social media. Unfortunately, with Corey Burke, because she wound up buying into most of this rhetoric that was presented on leftist mainstream media, such as CNN, such as MSNBC, and shows like The View, basically what happened with Corey Burke is she entered into this echo chamber, and as she entered into this echo chamber where she was told that Kamala Harris had a good chance of winning, this is where she basically started to form this delusion regarding the 2024 presidential election. And as she formed this delusion, basically reinforced by the echo chambers of leftist media, what happened to Corey Burke is she started to buy into this delusion because she wanted Kamala Harris to win, because she believed as an alphabet person that Kamala Harris would look to go out here and protect the rights of alphabet people as the first non-black president, female president, so that this woman president would protect the rights of an alphabet person. And as she started to hear the news in Seattle, which is about 4 or 5 hours away from here in New York, and as they were on that, I believe that later time on the West Coast, and she at 8 o'clock in the evening heard this news that Donald Trump had become the president, this is where Corey Burke, who was again very caught up in the polarized rhetoric of the 2024 election and so caught up in Kamala Harris winning this election and wanting to see this victory, this is where this woman who had already had a tense relationship with her father, where she was possibly simmering and boiling in anger with her father, eventually wound up exploding in this rage. And as she wound up exploding in this rage, this is where she basically got into an argument with her father as related to turning off the lights, because the father was possibly sitting there as they were watching TV, and she turned off the lights. And basically, as she turned off the light, as he had this argument about turning off the lights, this is where Corey Burke wound up exploding in a rage. And as she exploded in this rage, what she did was go and grab an ice axe and look to go out here and use the argument as related to the lights as a motive to go out here and participate in the bout of rage, to take out her anger on the only man that she knew. And she wanted to take this anger out on the only man that she knew because she believed that it was men who were responsible for Donald Trump winning the 2024 election. And because she believed it was men who were responsible, she wanted to take her anger out on the only man that she knew, and the only man that she knew she could get power over, because a man is usually 8 times stronger than a woman. And because a man is 8 times stronger than a woman, what she knows, she could not fight a regular man who was about her own age. What she wanted to do was, again, attack her father, take out all the anger she had about men at her father, and take out all the anger at men that she had at her father, and basically see her father as a proxy for Donald Trump, basically take all of her anger at Donald Trump out on her father. And this is where she wound up, again, murdering her father with this ice axe, according to these reports. And then after murdering her father, continuing to express her anger and her rage about Donald Trump winning the election by smashing out the windows of her $800,000 home. And after smashing out the windows of her home, this is where the police came in. And as the police saw her, again, bloodied and again clapping and having this episode basically makes me have a theory that makes me speculate if this was a possible case of what I call Trump derangement syndrome taken to the extreme. Now, when I look at the case of this woman and I look at the case of another man who wound up murdering his whole family, all because Trump won the election, it basically has me pondering if we have an actual thing of what people call Trump derangement syndrome, and if we should actually make this a actual mental health disorder in the DSM-5, because when you have individuals basically, again, going out here and going berserk and having episodes like this where they're participating in these extreme acts of violence, it basically has me wondering if Trump derangement syndrome is becoming an actual mental disorder. And it has me wondering if it's becoming an actual mental disorder because, again, here we have a self-described alphabet feminist who is upset about Donald Trump winning the election to the point where she would murder her father. And this is just one of several incidents and episodes of people basically having a problem dealing with this reality that a majority of the country wound up voting for Donald Trump in the 2024 election. A majority of people voted to the point where Donald Trump wound up winning the popular vote and the electoral vote, not to mention the House and the Senate. And because these people can't cope with the idea of a possible red America, these people basically wind up just basically snapping because they can't deal with the reality that Trump is the president. And because they can't deal with reality of Trump being the president, they look to do harm to people in their family and their social circles, and they look to do harm to those people because they just can't cope with that reality. And when you have someone who cannot cope with an actual reality and they start participating in violence against others or look to hurt themselves, that is a definition of a person who has a serious mental disorder, and that's a person who possibly needs to be put away and put away in a mental facility. And I have to wonder if we need to start opening up mental facilities to deal with this whole situation after possibly diagnosing Trump derangement syndrome as a mental disorder, because it's looking to me like there was, like some people speculate, a mass formation psychosis as related to Donald Trump, a mass formation psychosis where people are having a problem dealing and coping with reality of Donald Trump being the 45th president, people having a problem coping with the reality of Donald Trump becoming the 47th president. And because these people can't cope with that reality and cannot accept that reality that we the people made the choice to vote for Donald Trump, many of these people are participating in antisocial and violent behaviors. And this antisocial and violent behavior is something that I find to be quite scary, because it shouldn't be where where an election of Donald Trump has people like this woman, Corey Burke, overwhelmed and basically feeling like the tension between her and her father basically hit a breaking point, and she winds up exploding to the point where she wants to again argue with her father and then use that argument as a motivation to possibly look to murder her father and use him as a proxy for Donald Trump, and express her anger at men because she thinks that men wound up voting for Donald Trump in a majority, when in actuality there was a good majority of white and Hispanic women who voted for Donald Trump. That's what's quite troubling to me as related to this whole case, as related to this woman who again was a highly educated rocket scientist, but sadly wasn't smart enough to understand how to discern the actual reality of the real world, basically because she was so eager to sit in an echo chamber and wanted to sit in this echo chamber where she basically bought into this delusion that the mainstream media basically wound up, I believe, encouraging her to believe that Kamala Harris had a good chance of winning the 2024 election, when all she had to do was go study history of the 1968 presidential election to possibly see the outcome of the 2024 election, where when Lyndon Johnson was forced to not be able to run for re-election due to his extreme unpopularity regarding the Vietnam War, what happened was in 1968 they basically had to run the vice president, and as they ran the vice president against Richard Nixon wound up crushing the vice president in that impromptu race that the Blue Party basically had to again rush to throw together. And sadly, many people are so caught up in their feelings of anger towards Donald Trump that they can't study history, and again so caught up in their emotions about being polarized by Donald Trump by the mainstream media that they can't see the reality of the real world. They couldn't see the real world in 2016 as related to Barack Obama's indifference basically alienating large voting blocks, and they also couldn't see how the pattern of a blue candidate getting 2 terms would lead to a red candidate usually winning, which is the pattern of the country. And sadly, in the case of this, again, feminist indoctrinated woman, she wanted to basically live in her rose-colored reality and wanted to live in that rose-colored reality where Kamala Harris would become the next president. And sadly, when that reality just did not be able to exist, this woman couldn't believe that she could deal with that reality. And sadly, what happened is we saw a possible episode of Trump derangement syndrome taken to the extreme. And again, but with this case, I'm wondering if we have to put Trump derangement syndrome as a mental disorder in the DSM-5, because this case and the other case of this man murdering his whole family out in Minnesota has me wondering if Trump derangement syndrome is a mental disorder that leads to both men and women winding up on the road to becoming men and women in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what possibly leads to individuals like this woman having these episodes like this, and the pattern of behavior that motivates them to participate in this behavior because they cannot cope with reality. You can pick up my book, The Man Crisis and the Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis and the Woman Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the man crisis or the woman crisis, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Now available for the first time in paperback, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. Learn all the reasons why so many Black women can't find a husband and why 70% of Black women are single. Get your copy of Why 70% of Black Women Are Single on Amazon.com today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.